So this week we're going to finish our study on Galatians 10. We started Galatians 10 last week and Galatians 6 verse 10.
Oh,
Did I say verse 10?
you said Galatians 10.
I see, okay. And Galatians 6 verse 10. And and just to preface what we're doing is we're actually more teaching the obstacles of we developed, since the internet age, we've developed a lot of social mores that I don't think people are thinking about when they're doing them. Like if someone's doing a TikTok video, they're making fun of someone that's old. I don't think they actually realize that this is actually discriminating against old people and creating a division in society. Or if somebody is actually like sometimes you can have like a political view that's correct, and then you look at somebody else that has an incorrect view, and then you're saying they're trying to control everybody, they're demon possessed, or they're oligarchies, or they're Nazis, or what have you. So like when you actually look at somebody else that's different and then attribute a bad value to them, then it's almost worse than them being wrong on the political issue, even if you're correct. Or then if you're there was a study out that people are changing their spending habits based on their social biases. Like 24% of young people are not buying at certain stores that they feel that don't match their values. And so I think Bill Gates called this social polarization. And this social polarization not only is destroying the world and destroying society and destroying people's ability to have friends, but it also makes it impossible to obey the commandments when you think in this hateful way, in this discriminatory way, where you're actually believing everybody else is an enemy. So what I think it's interesting is if you take a look at Paul's commandments, so like the one that we're on right now is be good to all men, okay? So can you really do that and participate in modern values? Obviously, I don't think that you can.
Right.
Okay, so we're not just teaching the verse, but we're more or less focusing on how damaging modern values are from a Christian perspective. Okay, so like I said, we're on chapter 6, verse 10, and and there is no chapter 10, so it's a good thing we're not trying to do chapter 10. At least in Galatians, that is. Okay, verse 10 says, "As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith." And an interesting shift that I think has occurred in the last 15, 20 years is I think the church age is over, and in a few weeks I'm going to teach the prophecies that demonstrate that, okay? But when the church age had ended, people thought success would make them happy. People thought finding the right wife or a woman finding the right husband would make them happy, or they thought their job would make them happy. And I would say somewheres near 2008, 2010, people, because iniquity abounding, Jesus says the love of many waxes cold, because of the way we've changed the structure of our society, I don't think people actually believe in happiness anymore, and they're viewing self-justification. They replace happiness with self-justification or a expression, and then bonding with people based on expression of fears. And what I think has happened is over 15 years, these things have gotten to the point where it's totally destroyed our ability to relate to God. Whereas before you could say, money isn't going to make you happy, it isn't going to buy you love, but you could take that wrong desire and, relate it to the right desires. Say love comes from peace and from goodness and from being good to your neighbors and so on and so forth, and it's of greater value than money. Whereas with the idolatry of fear, that doesn't actually work, because you could say you need to love everybody, and then the person that's fearful can convince themselves that they are, if they're not harming people. Meanwhile, they're not actually trying to connect with anybody. And if you have fear, you can actually think there is an imminent danger. If you're more of a conservative person with fear, you can think that you need a million guns to protect yourself and your family, because your house is constantly in danger of being attacked by others. And if you're a liberal, you can think that socially connecting with somebody is some form of abuse, and that anytime somebody approaches you, or if you're a girl, if you think that somebody thinks that you're beautiful, that's misogynistic. And or if you're conservative, then you think anything that infringes on your rights is a problem. And so you think these fears are legitimate, and if they're legitimate, then they make it so that you can't express feelings to other people, you can't be good to other people, you can't be hospitable, and as a result of it, people don't believe in happiness. And so I think when you look at it from the lens of 2,000 years ago, the apostle teaching common behavior to new Christians, it's quite amazing how different this world is to the world that we live in now. Okay, so to do good to all men. So we'd started this last week. Okay. So now if we actually were to do good to all men, the way that Paul says, why does it create more happiness to be good to true believers? It says especially them of the household of faith. So if you're extra good to a true believer, why is that more happy?
Well, one, they're going to reciprocate it better, they're going to treat you better. There's less fear of, them mistreating you or using you, because they're not going to do that. But then also, whatsoever things you do unto God's people, you do to God. So there's another layer of happiness, like knowing that you're doing good to God, and then you get more of a connection with God too.
That's an excellent answer. If there's anything I would add to that, is that a good person is a reflection of happiness. So therefore you're anticipating more good, and you're also anticipating that they're going to reciprocate. Maybe you said this, I'm not sure, that they're going to reciprocate.
I said that they would, but not the anticipation.
Yeah, so you're anticipating their reciprocation, and you're knowing that you're creating more good in the world.
Yeah, you're edifying them.
Right. Whereas when you're good to a non-believer, it's still a good thing. That's why the verse says, "Be good unto all men," but it's not quite as happy of an experience, because it's not necessary that non-believer might just use your goodness to take advantage of you. They might, it might make them worse. Whereas a believer,
It's going to help them.
right, it helps them and creates more actual goodness. So if we favor believers, does this mean that so if you're supposed to favor a believer, does this mean that by God's law you have to agree and believe everything they say?
Obviously not. Everybody's different. You can be good to someone without agreeing with them.
Correct, right? I think this is something that's evolved in the last 20 years in society. Is people are trying to, like, if they like someone or like something, they assume that everything they like has to be true, and then everything that they disagree with has to be false. I call it the all good, all bad thing, right? And this is true with God, right? But even with God, you technically can't use this principle even though everything he says is true. Why?
You don't know everything?
Because what?
You don't know everything?
Because you would say because you don't know everything?
Right.
That's correct, yes. Because your perception of God might not be 100% correct.
Right.
So you can't even though God himself is 100% correct, you can't
Yeah,
assume what you're saying of God is 100%.
Yeah, your opinion of his opinion might be off.
Correct, yes. And we know that it's a fact that it is off, right? How do we know that our opinions of God are not 100% correct?
Basically, because we're not God. Like our perception is limited to our experience.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think, okay, so like, I know that what I'm teaching right now is 100% correct, right? But do you believe that I could possibly be teaching it as well as Jesus could?
No.
Right. So therefore, at best, if I am 100% correct, my understanding is limited.
Right.
But most likely, whatever I know is not 100% perfect.
Right.
So we strive for perfection, but we don't. It's like the joke. What is always near is always coming, but is never here.
Yeah. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, right? So same thing is true with wisdom and perfection with God. Like we always need to strive for perfection. We always need to look for it, and we all need to, set our heart on what is true, right? But not one person has all of the truths. So like in the political divide, you have like people accuse a lot of like the Trump supporters having a cult-like mindset because everybody is just assuming that everything that's said is true. And then you have it on the left too, but it's just not as bad. You don't have a polarized figure dictating the values. But people on the left are gonna assume that whatever is popular in their group is 100% true. And then you have it in the social facets of younger people on whatever is cool or popular is better than what everyone else. So when you put yourself in a group and you think that group is better than everybody else, then you think that what the group believes is 100% true. Then it evolves to believing other groups are inferior to the point where other people's opinions don't matter. And then the next phase of this is then other people don't matter, which we haven't gotten to yet, but I do believe, sadly, I think we are,
Heading that way.
heading that way, correct. And so basically, in order to be good to all men, you have to, you can't, you don't have to agree with all men in order to be good to all men.
Right.
If someone is a good person, it doesn't matter if they're not 100% perfect based on your understanding of what perfection is. And we all have flaws. So some people can actually have a flaw that leads them to something good that you don't know about. But we would not be instructed to edify each other if we had to assume that all of our thoughts are 100% correct.
Right.
Now, the nice thing about the mystery of Scripture is where Paul says, keep your mind on whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are holy, whatsoever things are of a good report. If you actually are doing something good, then it doesn't matter if there's something better. Anything that's good, God endorses. Anything that's good is okay. You know?
Yeah.
And so, okay, now let's move along to the next one. So does this goodness to a believer include expressing love?
Definitely. I mean, I think I have a dozen verses, but love in word and in deed, or like out of the abundance of their heart, your mouth speaks. If we're supposed to greet one another with a holy kiss, I mean, we're supposed to express our feelings.
Yeah, so I think the idea of goodness has been watered down. Like if someone's a decent person and they live a life of fear, then they think just having good manners is being good, or lending someone money or giving someone money in need is an essence of being good. But being good goes beyond just simple being cordial and being a little bit generous. Being good involves sacrifice. Being good involves love. And love doesn't have any value if it's not expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in our society today, people are finding it really easy to talk about what they don't like about somebody, but they're not very often expressing what they do love about somebody, or what they do actually think is admirable. And the only thing that we're doing that looks like that is if we're trying to support somebody that's attacking somebody else. So people might actually speak well of somebody that's condemning the group that they're against, but they're not actually expressing interpersonal love with people that they want to be close to. So does this being, favoring them with a household of faith, does this involve spending time with them? Taking time out of your day?
Yeah, if they're, yes. I'm sorry, nothing.
Well, what is the social, okay, we have a few social norms that have evolved in the last 20, 30 years that negate spending time with people. Okay, we've addressed one of them over and over again, which is fear, right? There's a fear of being close. There's a fear, okay, people are afraid that if they do spend time with you, that you're going to become annoying and you're going to be a hindrance to their life, or that you might make them look bad to other people that might not like you, right? Another thing that causes people to not spend time with people is working too much, right? So people are trying to fill the entirety of their schedule with work, and as a result of that, you don't really have time for somebody else. Right? The other thing is the social segregation that we've evolved through social media cliques. Like, it used to just be in high school that we had cliques, and now maybe some of it is because people aren't becoming adults when they become adults. Maybe that high school mindset is kind of permeating society. But now, because we have on the liberal side, we have the cancel culture. On the conservative side, we have the demonization of people that are different. We have the constant negativity on the news, We don't see people as vessels of happiness anymore. We see them as potential danger, right? So when you put all of those things in a culture, then there isn't a lot of motive to spend time with people. Not to mention that we've put financial success at too high a level in society. So like when you become older, you then get programmed into spending time with customers, potential bosses, potential opportunities, and you're not actually spending loving quality time with people just for the sake of spending time. So if you see that someone is a good person, I look at it this way. Your first priority should be a true believer, and then your second should be a good person, and your third should be someone in need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so basically, and hopefully in that mix is where you have friends, and hopefully all your friends get inspired to become believers, right? So, but you're not doing good to all men if you're caught up in the isolation mindset that I'm not going to spend time with anybody. You know, you have to actually make time for people in order to be good to people.
Right.
Can you favor them of the household of faith without being willing to make a personal sacrifice for them? Or without making a personal sacrifice?
I think if you have a relationship with somebody, sooner or later they're gonna need you. Like life isn't like a walk in the park, and you get fair weathered friends or real friends. So the people that are gonna be there and take a hit for you, so to speak, are the people that actually care about you.
So if you go back during the Christian era, especially before the Industrial Revolution, when everybody got by on the farm, it was. I understand it was a little bit easier back then, or is even easier in the early, like in the 50s and the 60s, because, your housing costs weren't half of your income.
Mm-hmm.
So if I've got an extra $2,000 or $3,000 a month, and then you need something, right? Then if you're my friend and I have the means and you don't, then I need to help you, right?
Right.
Okay, so one thing that's changed in our culture that makes the idea of making a sacrifice is families aren't taking care of their parents anymore. Everyone trying to be independent makes it harder to survive, because now everybody has to have their own home, everyone has to have their own car, everyone has to have their own appliances. And then housing costs are getting so high that if you're living paycheck to paycheck and working 3 jobs, it doesn't feel normal to make a sacrifice. And then if you are ahead, and you look at the financial gurus are saying, people that put away $10,000 a year got $2 million
Mm-hmm.
by the time they retire.
Right.
That is being rewarded more in society than the widow's mite. Than this person, like where Paul says she didn't stop. The widow that's a widow indeed, that washed the saints of the feet of the saints, took people in, etc., etc. Society is not rewarding these personal sacrifices, and because of greed, we're getting so many expenses that the sacrifice, in essence, is bigger than it was before, because all of life's expenses have gone up. Mm-hmm. But there's one silver lining in this modern culture that wasn't true before, is that living expenses have gone up, but personal expenditures have gone down.
Yeah.
So it's easier to buy someone a coat than it was 50
yeah.
years ago. It's
Yeah.
easier to buy someone a meal or
Pair
what,
of shoes or
Yeah.
a ride.
So like housing costs are triple what they were in the 70s, but elective spending is a quarter what it was in the 70s.
Okay.
So even though you have less money, in some ways it's easier if you're not literally working to pay bills, and then people then get encouraged. Like, I don't know why people do this, but a lot of people on social media, they get a new car, they post it on social media. They get a new house, they post it on social media. And then people get caught up in lifestyle creep where as soon as they have more money, they might start buying more coffees at Starbucks, or they might upgrade their car, or they might go on more trips and then get used to that lifestyle. And then that lifestyle then makes it difficult for them to make a sacrifice. But the way that we were designed, Paul says, to be content with food and clothing, everything above your needs for survival should be something that you're willing to share with somebody that you love. And I believe that the way that our society is being structured now, makes personal, sacrifices, more difficult. Okay. Now, does being good to them of the household of faith include emotional support?
Yeah, like especially like in our modern world, most people aren't struggling financially as much. They don't need as much, but they still definitely need emotional support.
Yes, I think our understanding of goodness has been watered down in the last couple decades, I guess is what I'm saying, because we've developed these social mores that are contrary to human love, life, or whatever. And so, once again, just being polite to someone doesn't give them emotional support. So if you're being good to someone, this means that you care about their day, you care about their life, you care about their meaning in life, and you care about what matters to them. It means you express love, encouragement, and goodness to them. You're an encouragement to them. You also would be willing to give to them in need and be loyal to them. And you also don't have to agree with a person on everything they do and say in order to love them. Now, I'm not taking away from Paul saying that we are to be like-minded, right? But Paul also witnessed to people that were pagan. He witnessed to people that were Jews. He witnessed to people that weren't religion. Like people come from all backgrounds. So it's nice if we're like-minded, and we all need to have the goal of being like-minded in the values of Christ. But we also need to be a light to a fallen world, and a fallen world is still made in the image of God. And so as we grow, we can't expect that everybody has the exact same opinion as us, and we need to recognize we're not God. So therefore, if someone disagrees with us, or if we not everyone that we disagree with, are we right when we disagree with them? Like I say, no matter what my opinions are, I don't believe that it's a fact that they're all correct.
Right.
So therefore, I'm always open to a different opinion. Even if I'm 99%, it's still not a fact, And so therefore, we need to be open and loving to people that we disagree with. We need to have understanding and feelings for people of a different culture. We learn people have a different psychological background, intellectual backgrounds, intellectual gifts. People have different gifts and different talents. And if we're trying to be a child of God, if in order to love people, we need to not discriminate against people based on their life experience that molds who they are and understand that we're all common people. We all could be molded the same as somebody else. And so therefore the commonality is what we need to find to win them to Christ, but also we can learn from each other, we can grow with each other, and we can experience more in life through our love for each other. Okay, so the next question is kind of similar to the last one, is how exactly do you give someone emotional support in a good, positive way? I'll tell you why I'm asking the question if it helps, okay? Is I think now that people have become insecure, people view emotional support to be self-justification.
Okay.
So how do you give emotional support that makes someone happy that's not self-justification?
Well, first you gotta understand, like, what makes them tick, what's good about them, what they care about, and maybe even what their weaknesses are. So then if you understand these things, then when somebody's going through something, you can point out what good they've done, where they have succeeded, and maybe even like try to explain to them that God appreciates their effort.
Does emotional support always have to be when someone's going through a problem?
No.
So how do you give emotional support if it's not a problem? Which I think is what's missing the most in our
Okay.
society.
Yeah. Well, you gotta recognize what's good in the other person, and then be aware of the good that they're doing.
Well, let's hit this at home, okay?
Okay.
All right. Let's say that you just took on a contract with your work that's way bigger than what you were geared for,
Yeah.
and you pull it off, and you succeed,
Yeah.
and you're done.
Yeah.
Do you need emotional support?
Yes. You do.
Is there a problem when it's done?
No.
Right.
No, but you might be a little exhausted. You might need somebody to be proud of you.
Okay. Or like Ben, okay? Okay, so 2 weeks ago you ran 6 miles. Is there a problem with that? Does it feel good that you finish it if nobody cares?
I guess no.
Right, so it's nice to have somebody that's happy with
Your accomplishment.
your accomplishment, right? So so I think like in a negative, insecure society, we have a rule: we're not going to compliment anybody, right? And there was a time where people fished for compliments too much. Like people were demanding compliments from people back in the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I think we have the opposite problem where people feel like if a girl was to compliment a guy, then she might feel that that's giving up control and that's demeaning to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
That she can be strong too. She can run that 6 miles, so she shouldn't be impressed with him or
Okay.
and then the guy is programmed not to give compliments to people, especially a girl, because he doesn't want to trigger a feminist response or for her to think that he's being demeaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in the spiritual front, people may not want to compliment people because we have so many different viewpoints out there in the world that we're not going to emotionally support someone if we feel that their views are different than ours,
Mm-hmm.
right? So can you give emotional support to somebody that has a different view than you?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not based on agreeing on everything. It's based on recognizing something good.
We're recognizing people's efforts.
Yeah.
So if someone puts a strong effort into something in their life,
Mm-hmm.
it's good to offer emotional support. If somebody cares about something deeply and you notice it, that's another time that it's good to give emotional support. If somebody has reached a milestone in life,
Mm-hmm.
then it's good to offer emotional support. So I think the social mores of the last 20, 30 years have killed emotional support. I know that I can count on less than one hand people that would give me emotional support. Like When I'm talking to people, if I'm like, if I was happy with something I accomplished, usually that's either a conversation killer or something to change the subject on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think feminism, wokeism, and now you have this Christian nationalism and this the polarization. I like what Bill Gates said. I need to look at it further because I kept calling it the political divide, and then Bill Gates said he gave this list of 4 warnings to young people, and I can't remember what they all are, but for some reason one of them was the polarization of society. It was like, that's brilliant because it's really a lot more encompassing than politics.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is getting polarized in a specific mindset that is actually killing the ability to have emotional support for people. Because if you're socially polarized, then you're only trying to support people that are against what you're against. And then you think that your depth and identity comes from the things that you're dissatisfied with. And a man's life doesn't consist of the things that he's annoyed with, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay, so is Paul, I got this need. Okay. How has so basically this question is just a summary, is it's pretty obvious, I've pretty much given the answer, but how has the segregation of people of age, politics, beauty, hobbies, cultures, economic status, intelligence status, mental health status, how has the separation and categorization of everybody affected our abilities to be good to each other?
Well, it's a huge hindrance. I mean, it's squashing it because if you look around at the world and find everything that you can to find different, like they used to say, look for what you have in common, not for what you have different.
Yep.
And now, like that seems to be gone. We only look for what's different, and it's impossible to get close to somebody if you're gonna shun them for being different.
Right, we're seeing what's different as an enemy,
Right.
for the most part.
Right.
I mean, there's a commonality in many circles, of saying we're fighting for people that we think are being oppressed that are different.
Mm-hmm.
But even that's really the same,
Right.
because then you're trying to be the same as,
Everyone else that's against life.
right. And then you wouldn't know that if you weren't like a true Christian and seeing these same people discriminate against Christians.
Right.
Or people can say, don't make fun of that culture. And no, I don't want to talk to this stranger because what if they're a serial killer, a rapist, and a child molester? It's like, what's worse, thinking that their accent is weird or thinking that somebody is a potential child molester?
Right. Right.
I don't think people realize how bad these negative judgments are.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of ironic that they take something very minor and think this is damaging to people, right? But meanwhile, we're not spending time with people. We're not befriending people. We're not being close to people. We're not trying to save people. We just think we have more depth because we can identify that some insecure person will be offended by this behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, we don't care about the stranger. We don't care about the Christian. We don't care about the person that's lonely. We're not impressed with anybody that's good. We don't want anyone to love us, and we're sure as heck aren't going to reciprocate feelings. But if you actually think that there's something, if you actually use a Chinese accent, or if you actually don't favor a black person for a job over a white person, you need to be canceled. Not saying that those social discriminations are good, But I am saying they're not as bad as the ones that everybody does so naturally. You know, because the discriminations that everyone's doing causes us to not have a life.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Okay. So, how's the political divide destroyed our abilities to be good to each other? I kind of mentioned that in the question I ad lib, but one thing I saw that was really crazy, 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 okay? I'm going to include this, okay? Is Taylor Swift, for instance. I keep talking about her, right? But she endorsed Kamala Harris,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So, and then she gets booed at the Super Bowl. Have you ever seen anything that crazy before?
No.
So, could you genuinely like her and then not like her because if you're a Trump, like say you're a Trump supporter, does her supporting Kamala Harris make her less appealing and less attractive?
Or less talented.
Or less, right?
Or negate anything good she's done. Like apparently she gives a portion of every show to local food shelters or whatever.
Right, and like I was a kid, like it was on the news this morning that James Bond got bought out by Amazon, right? We never thought of James Bond as a communist, did we?
No.
But he always found that beautiful communist girl to save and to marry or date or whatever, right? Like I don't really believe there was a time before 2010 that people actually valued how much they like someone based on their political views, right? So, how has the political divide affected our ability to like other people?
Well, it has a huge. It's almost like a god, like the faction tells you who you can like and who you can't like. So it's like that guy with the something about the Bud Light thing, and then the interview asked him, "Why do you hate it?" And he didn't know.
Right.
He didn't even know, but he knows his faction is against it.
Well, what if somebody like I remember in the 90s, everybody loved the Kennedys. Was everybody a Democrat?
No.
Wasn't every Kennedy a Democrat?
Yep.
Right? So,
Yeah. And not slightly, but committedly, wholeheartedly Democrat.
right. Okay, so so there's something strange. So the political divide, I believe that the political divide has now evolved to a point where the political divide itself is a bigger problem
Yes.
than any of the actual issues
Right.
on either side of the aisle.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. If you took, so they have prominent figureheads on the right, but if you eliminated those figureheads, that doesn't fix the problem.
And the same thing, with
On the left as well.
on the left too. And I've always, I don't know, maybe it's my age group, I don't know, but like, I like Robert Reich, who's a liberal economist, and I like conservative economists too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think that I have to agree with everybody.
Right.
Like I like a lot of what Dave Ramsey has to say, but I don't necessarily hold it as the gospel truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with Robert Reich, right? And I like, I don't think Janet Yellen was a bad person, and I like Jerome Powell, right? Now these are non-believing people that are on completely different sides of the economic issue, right? And so I don't see. I really think that people have taken promoting their identity to such a strange degree that people could decide they don't like Taylor Swift just because she didn't vote for Trump. I mean, that is so stupid, right? Now, if you don't like her music, that's fine, right?
Right.
Because that's what she does. She sings, right?
Right.
So if you say, okay, I'm not into that music, that's how we used to do it, right?
Yeah.
You can say, I like this person's music, I don't like theirs,
Right.
but it was never based on
Their politics.
their politics, right? Their politics. Who you vote for politically or what you believe has nothing to do with how attractive you are, has nothing to do with how much passion you have as a person, has nothing to do with how good you are to your family, has nothing to do with the charity work that you
Yeah.
do,
Right.
okay? And these are the things that are an essence of the core of a person's character. A person's character is how much love they have, how good they are, how charitable they are, how dynamic they are, how much feeling they have, right?
Mhm.
It's not based on what they intellectually believe, and it's not a sum of all of their opinions. Like if somebody went to Africa and spent all their time helping homeless people, and then they come back home here in America and they got the dumbest opinions in the world on every issue known to mankind, does that make them a bad person?
Nope.
Right. Does it mean you have to agree with them because you understand they're a good person?
Nope.
Right. So I do think that people somehow are trying to fit in with a certain group and they're trying to validate their identity. And so then they feel that the more they subscribe to a certain political affiliation, the more they promote their self-identity and the more accepted they are in the group, and they think that's going to give them a more meaningful life. But a meaningful life only comes from love and truth. So if there's no sincerity to what you're doing, it doesn't actually work. So the political divide has had a disastrous effect on society. And it makes obeying the Bible impossible. Because you're supposed to be a light to the world. You're not a light to the world by condemning everybody. Okay. So what sort of steps can you take as a believer in order to obey what Paul is saying here in verse 10, to be good to all men, especially to them of the household of faith? Nobody has an answer for
Crickets out.
Just, I guess, one, for starters, make it so you have time to be there for and help people, then two, have a bountiful eye and look for people that need your help.
Okay, you got to examine yourself in the faith, as Paul says. Okay, so you got to look at how modern social mores have affected you, and then you need to overcome them. But you need you need to. If you're progressive, then you need to find something good in a conservative. If you're conservative, you need to find something good in a progressive, and you need to actually own it and actually see good in them. And as a Christian, you need to look and favor people that are a reflection of God. So if you actually value people based on God's word instead of based on your social circle, then that makes it easier to favor them of the household of faith. And then you need to make redemption your goal in life. And so therefore, if you look at things from a spiritual, eternal perspective instead of a carnal perspective, then you would see our position in eternity is more important than the affairs of this world. So then it would become easier to be more focused on the fruits of the Spirit than political thoughts or things that you're opposed to. And then people that are of the household of faith would then have the same goal, so then it would just become more natural to be good to them. And praying without ceasing and meditating upon God's word is also necessary components.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how does favoring a believer give you more faith in God?
Well, if you start favoring things that are a reflection of God, and then like good things come from that, like that gets validated. Like say you admire somebody doing something good, you help them do it, and then you start, feeling the enthusiasm or the love from doing that, then this is going to validate that all these things are right, and that's going to cause you to believe it more.
Well, we all have strengths and insecurities, right? So if we're committing our life to God, then we're committing our life to love, goodness, peace, faith.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, if you favor a believer, then you actually get love, goodness, and
Yep.
faith. And the more of that you get, the more faith you have in it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are not favoring believers, then you're favoring people whose life isn't centered around the fruits. You don't feel as much of the fruits, and the less you feel the fruits, then the less faith you actually have.
Yep.
Okay. So how does the mindset of fear and avoidance basically suppress these natural cravings and needs that people have?
Well, every time you go to do something good, to show some support or love to somebody, you start coming up with reasons not to do it. And you feed yourself all those reasons, and you're just not going to do it.
Yeah, I think it was before we started the YouTube channel, we talked about the liability mindset.
Yeah.
Is I think people started parenting their children with a liability mindset because they're working all the time. They would only listen to their kids when there was a problem.
Yeah.
So then I think kids almost learn love from a problem because I get to see my parent when I'm getting suspended from school or when I'm sick or when I'm bullied, right? And then I think that this caused people to mistakenly think that love is based on how you handle problems. But the mindset of fear and avoidance actually causes you to be afraid of happiness. It causes you to be afraid to be close to another human being. It causes you to be afraid to know your neighbors. Causes you to be afraid to be generous to someone. Afraid to make a sacrifice. And all these fears create isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe this is why we're moving to an isolated society. Fear is the opposite of faith. So, dear God, I pray that everyone that sees this video can see this concept that this apostasy is one of fear, isolation, and one that makes it impossible to obey these commandments, that you give us hearts to obey them and to feel and see and express the fruits and fullness of your Spirit. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.